This is chapter 4 from Sri Aurobindo's The Life Divine, entitled Reality Omnipresent. Since then, we admit both the claim of pure spirit to manifest in us its absolute freedom and the claim of universal matter to be the mold and condition of our manifestation. We have to find a truth that can entirely reconcile these antagonists and can give to both their due portion in life and their due justification in thought. Amercing neither of its rights, denying in neither the sovereign truth from which even its errors, even the exclusiveness of its exaggerations, draw so constant a strength. For wherever there is an extreme statement that makes such a powerful appeal to the human mind, we may be sure that we are standing in the presence of no mere error, superstition, or hallucination, but of some sovereign fact disguised, which demands our fealty and will avenge itself if denied or excluded. Herein lies the difficulty of a satisfying solution, and the source of that lack of finality which pursues all mere compromises between spirit and matter. A compromise is a bargain, a transaction of interest between two conflicting powers. It is not a true reconciliation. True reconciliation proceeds always by a mutual comprehension leading to some sort of intimate oneness. It is, therefore, through the utmost possible unification of spirit and matter that we shall best arrive at their reconciling truth, and so at some strongest foundation for a reconciling practice in the inner life of the individual and his outer existence. We have found already in the cosmic consciousness a meeting place where matter becomes real to spirit. Spirit becomes real to matter. For in the cosmic consciousness, mind and life are intermediaries and no longer, as they seem in the ordinary egoistic mentality, agents of separation, fomenters of an artificial quarrel between the positive and the negative principles of the same unknowable reality. Attaining to the cosmic consciousness mind, illuminated by a knowledge that perceives at once the truth of unity and the truth of multiplicity, and seizes on the formulae of their interaction, finds its own discords at once explained and reconciled by the divine harmony. Satisfied, it consents to become the agent of that supreme union between God and life, towards which we tend. Matter reveals itself to the realizing thought and to the subtilized senses as the figure and body of spirit. Spirit in its self-formative extension. Spirit reveals itself through the same consenting agents as the soul, the truth, the essence of matter. Both admit and confess each other as divine, real, and essentially one. Mind and life are disclosed in that illumination as at once figures and instruments of the supreme conscious being, by which it extends and houses itself in material form, and in that form unveils itself to its multiple centers of consciousness. Mind attains its self-fulfillment when it becomes a pure mirror of the truth of being, which expresses itself in the symbols of the universe. Life, when it consciously lends its energies to the perfect self-figuration of the divine in ever new forms and activities of the universal existence. In the light of this conception, we can perceive the possibility of a divine life for man in the world, which will at once justify science by disclosing a living sense and intelligible aim for the cosmic and the terrestrial evolution, and realize by the transfiguration of the human soul into the divine, the great ideal dream of all high religions. But what then of that silent self, inactive, pure, self-existent, self-enjoying, which presented itself to us as the abiding justification of the ascetic? Here also harmony and not irreconcilable opposition must be the illuminative truth. The silent and the active Brahman are not different, opposite, and irreconcilable entities, the one denying, the other affirming a cosmic illusion. They are one Brahman in two aspects, positive and negative, and each is necessary to the other. It is out of this silence that the Word, which creates the worlds, forever proceeds. For the Word expresses that which is self-hidden in the silence. It is an eternal passivity which makes possible the perfect freedom and omnipotence of an eternal divine activity in innumerable cosmic systems. For the becomings of that activity derive their energies and their illimitable potency of variation and harmony from the impartial support of the immutable being, its consent to this infinite fecundity of its own dynamic nature. Man, too, becomes perfect only when he has found within himself that absolute calm and passivity of the Brahman, and supports by it with the same divine tolerance and the same divine bliss of free and inexhaustible activity. Excuse me. Those who have thus possessed the calm within can perceive always welling out from its silence the perennial supply of the energies that work in the universe. It is not, therefore, the truth of the silence to say that it is in its nature a rejection of the cosmic activity. The apparent incompatibility of the two states is an error of the limited mind which, accustomed to transient oppositions of affirmation and denial, and passing suddenly from one pole to the other, is unable to conceive of a comprehensive consciousness vast and strong enough to include both in a simultaneous embrace. The silence does not reject the world, it sustains it, or rather, it supports with an equal impartiality the activity and the withdrawal from the activity, and opposes also and approves also the reconciliation by which the soul remains free, and still even while it lends itself to all action. But still, there is the absolute withdrawal. There is the non-being. Out of the non-being, says the ancient scripture, being appeared. Then, into the non-being, it must surely sink again. If the infinite indiscriminate existence permits all possibilities of discrimination and multiple realization, does not the non-being, at least, as primal state and sole constant reality, negate and reject all possibility of a real universe? The nihil of certain Buddhist schools would then be the true ascetic solution. The self, like the ego, would be only an ideative formation by an illusory phenomenal consciousness. Go to part 2.